extending research-based advocacy to all Nigerians forms a critical part of our mandate at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. At different times, the NESG conducts research-based advocacy by employing public education and community mobilization strategies, among others.
The diversification of this economy is very, very important.
Research-based advocacy allows social voice, prioritization, and bringing different actors together for dialogue towards sustainable and inclusive development in our dear country. Welcome to the NESG Radio. Hello and welcome to NESG Radio, a weekly podcast where we dialogue about critical issues and the ideas to resolve them in the national interest. I'm your host, Yinka Inyolakon, and my guest today is Miss Nkechi Obi, a juggernaut in the sport business sector. Nkechi is passionate about sports as a business and not just recreation. She is the thematic lead of the Sport Industry Thematic Group of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Welcome, madam. So tell me, what is Sports Industry Thematic Group?
Well, the Sports Industry Thematic Group is one of the thematic groups under the Tourism, Hospitality, Entertainment and Creatives and Sports Policy Commission, one of the 13 policy commissions of the NESG, and essentially came about 4 or 5 years ago when the NESG decided to actually take a look at sports as an industry and the business of sports. What are its potentials? How can we delve in there and make it a contributor to the national economy? Move it away from purely participatory, become an economic activity, measurable, in its contributions to the GDP of the country, and as well as in terms of job creation, in terms of industrial output, and in terms of empowerment and engagement, community development. So essentially how to perform a social development function, the essential sports as a social development tool, performing that social development through economic means. So the Sports Industries Thematic Group was set up to drive the repositioning of sports as an economic contributor to Nigeria. And so far, so good. We've had several engagements with stakeholders, cutting across all the value chain of sports, manufacturing, content development. You'll be surprised, aviation, creative, tourism, all of that, And in the process, we're now at the stage where we worked with the government, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and a series of over 800 stakeholders over a 4-year period to come up with a draft national sports industry policy, which is undergoing some review now and hopefully should get to the Federal Executive Council sometime in March for them to approve, and then we can now say the focus of sports is not only participatory, but it's now business. So the Sports Industries Thematic Group is at the heart of that drive, working hand in hand, collaborating with the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development in line with NESG's role as a connector, enabler, and its objective of a private sector driven economy.
Awesome. So my next question to you is, the perception of millions is that sports is recreation, just play sports or play it as an individual and, achieve stardom. But what potential does sports have as a business, especially due to the high unemployment and poverty rate in Nigeria?
So, in answer to your question, sports globally is private sector driven. The end product you see on TV, where maybe when you're watching a football match between two clubs, And so you see 22 people on the field. But when you're seeing those 22 people, there are no less than 400 people that has made it possible for those 22 people to play for those 90 minutes. Now, those 400 people are just for that day. There is also an army of probably about another 1,000 people who have to work for about a week to bring those 90 minutes. And behind those 1,000 people are probably another 10,000 people who have been working for like 3 months to bring that. And behind those 10,000 people is probably another 100,000 people who are doing all of this stuff. So it's a pyramidal thing. So for sports, what you see on TV for 90 minutes is really 1/5 of what is required to get those 90 minutes. Right. So if you think of the sports industry as an iceberg, the final product we all see when we click our remotes is the 1/5 at the top of the iceberg. The 4/5 at the bottom is really what drives that 1/5. So if you think of that, the biggest challenge we have in Nigeria is that not enough work is being done to develop the 4/5. So our own iceberg output is very low because the input is also very low. So what we are saying here is that in this country, and the potentials are that if a certain amount, let's call it X, is injected into the sports industry, if we put X into the sports industry, it will translate to jobs, it will translate to facilities, it will translate to tourism, it will translate to capacity development, so it is that X. What is that X we need every year, and how long do we need it? From our research, from the work we've done with the Sports Industry Thematic Group and working with the ministry, we actually had the minister say at the pre-summit engagement in September last year that we will require a minimum of $500 million every year for 10 years, which means we will require $5 billion investment 10 years to create 3 million jobs, that's direct jobs, to create 6 million indirect jobs, so that's almost 10 million jobs. And that would involve facilities, so things like community sports centers. You have to have facilities to play sport. So in putting one sports facility in every single community, let's think of Nigeria as about 10,000 communities. So imagine putting one sports facility in 10,000 communities. The amount of construction they are going to do. And I understand that construction has a multiplier effect in terms of jobs of 7 to 1. So for every one person you employ in the construction industry, 7 people gain. So if we're able to put, let's even say 3,000 over a 10-year period, you cannot imagine the construction jobs they are going to have. Then just imagine 3,000 facilities. You're going to need coaches, you're going to need trainers, you're going to have gyms that will employ people, and those gyms must have equipment. So who's going to manufacture those equipment? Are you going to continue to import? Therefore, factories will be set up. And if you set up factories, it means that people are employed. Right. So manufacturing industry gains. Then if you look at encouraging people to play sport, if you put in place a law or a policy or a rule that says every child must play sport once a week, there are 40 million school children. So that immediately says that's a target of 40 million children. So wearing shirts, shorts, boots, and bringing a ball to school. Right. Somebody must manufacture 40 million balls here. So you set up. So you begin to see that when you change the perception from sports as only going to Olympics, Commonwealth Games, Nations Cup, where there are only maximum 100 people will go, 200 people. Okay, let me even, for the sake of this argument, 1,000. But we change it to, okay, let's allow every child must come and play sport. You've gone from 1,000 to 40 million. Right. So where you were just going and picking up, using carton to buy the thing from China, you now need to actually manufacture here. And 40 million people, you set up the factory. So let's say each factory employs 100 people, and you set up 20 or 30 or 40 factories. So 100 times 40, 4,000 people have seen jobs. Right. Jobs that were in China because we were importing. So that's an area of jobs. Now, if you have those jobs, those people will be spending money in the economy. One day, at the end of the day, they will have disposable income. And they will buy, and the money will be moving around. Now, let's go back to the facilities. What if every club in this country had their own stadium? Somebody must work those stadiums. Sure. Groundsmen, ticketing, hospitality. Somebody will sell food there. Somebody, So that is what sports provides. An ecosystem that is run by people. If all the clubs had their own stadium and I follow Eyimba, I can get up and enter a plane and go and watch Eyimba in Aba. Sure. I will stay in the hotel for 2 days. I will pay tickets. I will go and visit the town. The spending for every match that people go outside their place to go and watch their fans. In Europe, it's calculated at about the rate of about 300-400 euro you spend. So imagine if I go and watch Eyimba, I was paying in a hotel, maybe it's 20,000 I will pay for the hotel the night. Then I'll buy tickets, maybe it's 3,000 naira or 4,000 I'll pay. Then I will take taxi, I'll do all of this stuff. If I fly there, that's about another 60, 70. So think of it. I've spent about 150,000 locally in the economy. We need to begin to measure these things because that is what the country. So in terms of the government gets taxes because Eyimba will now pay the government tax. Me, the employed people are going to pay income tax. Sure. Me that I'm spending, I'm going to pay entertainment tax and all of that. Those that are building facilities and everything, we will pay VAT, we'll do all of this. The drinks people will make more money, the food people will make more money. So, and it goes on like that. So in terms of moving away, we're not saying you're moving from recreation because it's recreation based. Let's even leave the professional players. Let's talk about me and you who know we're never going to go to the Olympics, we're never going to go to the World Cup to play for Nigeria, we're never going to do any of this stuff. But yet, we exercise every morning. We look for where to go every morning. I've lost a few friends from jogging on the main road. Instead of having a place to go, cars knocked them down and they died. Now, if every community had a facility, you will exercise. For you to exercise, you buy t-shirts, you buy boots or sneakers, you buy socks, you buy exercise stimulant, you buy this, you buy that, you buy water bottle, you buy all these things. So if you are really interested, you alone, you can spend 100k in a year. Imagine 2-3 million of us spending 100k in a year. Somebody will produce those things or sell them. So, and it goes on. The value chain of sports is interconnected to so many other sectors. The health sector, it has been proven that if you can get people to exercise once, twice a week, it brings down the health costs of a country, which is why a lot of countries put it into their policy to encourage exercise as a means of taking care of non-communicable diseases. So imagine if you got your doctors, when you show up in the hospital, the first question the doctor asks you after looking at you, when last did you exercise? And they do it a lot abroad. And so before he writes that, take 2 tablets 3 times a day, the first thing he writes is 3 times a week, walking for 20 minutes. If I came to you and told you needed to walk for 20 minutes, you say, go away there, let's go and take issue. But if your doctor wrote you, say, our doctor has seen, I'm dying, and you obey the doctor. And so if we could get doctors to do that, we could get about another 30 million people exercising. Those 30 million people will buy shirts, shorts, boots, and carry racket or carry something. So we finished with the 40 million children. So you can see education has something to play. You can see health has something to play. You can see construction has a role to play. You can see manufacturing has a role to play. You can see professional services in the tourism hospitality industry has a role to play. And according to our macroeconomic output launched last week, there are 6 sectors they are looking. I've just listed 5 of them. So you begin to see that sports is at the heart of all of these things. So this is why sports is critical. And it can be a very low-hanging fruit to achieve manufacturing, to achieve construction, to achieve professional services in the area of education, in the area of health. I keep forgetting the last one. I'll remember it. But I remember 5 out of 6.
Okay, right. I understand that. So what are the socio-economic effects of a successful Nigerian sports industry? How does it benefit athletes? And not just athletes, how does it benefit everyone in the Nigerian community?
Okay, so when you want to find an athlete, let me tell you, for you to achieve success at the Olympics, you need a minimum of 12 years. It's a 12-year program. That's why sometimes, I watch the Olympics and I watch the World Cup and all from purely an interest level, commercial interest level. We haven't done enough to be able to stamp and say, this year we are winning this number of medals. We haven't done enough. It's a 12-year program, so which means sports is a youth-based thing. So if that person is showing up at the Olympics at age 20, it means that no later than age 8, he has started his progress. Now, if the critical thing is a pathway from raw talent to finished product,
Right.
and a sustainable, consistent pathway from raw talent to finished product, the Jamaicans can tell you how many people, athletes, are going to show up at the Olympics, and they can show you how those athletes made it that way. The Americans can show you. Great Britain can show you now, because in 1996, when they won only one medal in Atlanta, we won 2 medals, gold medal, they won 1. It was such a shame for them. By 1997, they set up what was called Sport England. They identified that Margaret Thatcher's time, when they took over all the open spaces and all those things, was detrimental to their sport. So what did they do? They set up an organization that walked backwards and ensured that facilities will be built in communities. Why? To encourage mass participation. Because it's at mass participation you see talent. It's where everybody is participating, from the baby that was born, which they are thrown into the swimming pool, to even the adults, old man and woman that are just walking. So they made it possible. And from 97 up until a couple of years ago, I have their spreadsheet, they spent just slightly above £3.5 billion over a 20-year period. But in that time, they put facilities at every level, community, high performance, and all, the culmination of which was the new high performance center for English football called St. George's Park. It took them almost 20 years to build that thing. Only when they saw that France's own Clairefontaine delivered that class of 98 that won that World Cup, Thierry Henry, all those people, that was when they got serious about St. George's. But look at from that 98 to when St. George's, just a few years ago, about 4 years ago, was when St. George's was completed. But that's the thing about the British. When they finally wake up to do something, it's a complete state of the art. So they have the one in your community, swimming centers, cycling centers, everything. And then they graduated it all the way up at every level to that high performance center at St. George's and a few other high performance centers that measure. So that's how the athletes are coming through. Which is why Britain too now, Great Britain can write how many medals? And for about 2 Olympics consistently, they've been coming like 3rd. Particularly in a sport, the best example is cycling. I know when they started the cycling program, they got Sky involved. And Sky said, okay, they wanted to get 1 million people cycling. So they encourage people to cycle to work. They put sponsorship and people started cycling to work, all of that. And from there, they found people. And from there, they groomed those people through a program, consistent program. Today, Great Britain is the #1 cycling country that wins not only the Tour de France, but they also win Olympic medals. Right. It is not rocket science. I keep telling people, wishing and getting down, praying and fasting will not help us together. The Kenyans are another set of people. So what does this tell us? That with a systematic program involving corporate training centers, which 9 times out of 10 are run by the private sector, It involves coaches who have been trained in capacity development centers that are set up by the private sector. Either we are going to a university. The point I'm making is along the value chain. Once it is structured, once it's systematic, once it is sustainable, the athlete can plot his or her chart. And even the government's responsibility is sports development. The government itself, because it has enabled investment in these areas, can say you will go to the National Training Center that has been set up in partnership with private sector. It is not free, but there will be scholarships that will be awarded to a talented athlete that has been developed, discovered at a grassroots level that encompasses mass participation in sport. So you start with mass participation to get as many 2, 3, 4-year-olds discovered. Then you find the good ones and take them through. Some people will drop by the wayside, they will become coaches, what have you. Really talented people will keep moving until after a while you can almost say with certainty, I will win 10 medals, I will win 20 medals. In Africa, Kenya is the best example. Every single medal that has been won at either Olympic, Commonwealth, multi-sport event by Kenya was won by members of one tribe, the Kalenjin. They are the people who run for Kenya. They have found out that their body mass index, everything suits long distance running. And so, Kenya has almost 20,000 training centers. But 2 of the 7 high performance centers in the world endorsed by the IWF are in Kenya. You cannot win a long distance medal in any of the major events if you have not trained in Kenya. Nowhere, if you like, anywhere in the world you come from, you will end up in Kenya. And so the Kenyans can tell you we will win the 3,000 meters steeplechase. They can tell you we will win like this. They can tell you we will win like that. It's a structured program. And Kenya, therefore, because of this developmental program, this investment by people like Nike and what have you into this program, Kenya athletes run all over the world and bring money back home. Their money has built 2 new cities in Kenya, Eldoret and Iten, where the growth rate of the real estate sector outperforms any other sector. 2 cities. All of this is sport. So, once again, there is no rocket science. The private sector must be involved in establishing the value chain that sees athletes go from raw talent to finished product consistently, sustainably, and assuredly. And once again, it is not a major thing. It's just for us the will, the policy, the investment, and backed by infrastructure and incentives to ensure that we all move in a particular direction.
You seem to be very passionate about sports. But on a lighter note, if you were a type of sport, what type of sport would you be? Would you be football, rugby? What would you be?
I'd be a team sport. Because I've consistently believed that you need many parts to make everything work. Not that individual sports don't have people behind them, but on the field of play, when the chips are down, you are left alone to answer for yourself. If you look at tennis, the tennis player has an army of coaches, fitness trainers, everything. But on that day, it's you. If you're making a mistake, no coach is going to come and stand by you. You must correct your mistake by yourself. So that's tough. That's tough because you actually need somebody's looking at things and telling you that here's where you're going wrong. but there's nobody. You don't even get halftime. You don't get anything. So I'm not sure I would have loved to be a solo sport. I prefer a team sport where my mates can see if I'm not running into the right direction and shout. Maybe it's my captain that will shout that, hey, move left or move right. You understand? So I would not be a boxer. I would not do boxing. I would not do tennis. I wouldn't do those things. But I would do football. I would do basketball. I do hockey. I actually played hockey for 11 years. Okay. So I can tell you that I played tennis as well. And I can tell you that the difference is really clear. I played basketball as well. And I played netball. I always felt better with the team sport than with individual sport. You need an army of people around you, both on and off the field of play. So I would never be a solo sport. Oh no, I would never. I need those people. And probably that's why we've succeeded at like the SITG. You know, we have members, but we also have a team, a small core team that will bounce things off each other, come gather together, you know, argue, then come to a consensus as to this is how we should present this thing. So it's never really been about me. And of recent, I've, started taking a back seat to allow a lot more people. So team sport.
So what then are the limitations that this sports policy movement currently faces? What are the challenges since you've been working hard at it? What challenges have you faced?
Really, the limitations are more of getting people to accept that this is the direction we must go. Things have been done for so long a particular way that people have gotten comfortable in that way. But it's not going to take us anywhere, except we make that leap to understanding that the private sector must be brought in and made to see where they will get value for money, and not only get value for money, where their money is contributory to a leap forward. We've stagnated, and the reason we've stagnated is we simply have not been able to show the private sector that you get value for money. So we are very fortunate to have a minister like Honorable Sunday Dare, who gets it and is committed to actually finding ways to bring the private sector. So it's for us to work with all stakeholders, both sports stakeholders and the non-sports stakeholders who are actually involved in the value chain. So the lawyers, the bankers, the financial services people, the communication people, the universities, health practitioners, who are not necessarily sports people, but they are actually required for this great leap forward. So, like I said, so many things are being worked out, and at the end of the day, we would have that buy-in. It's really buy-in, from everybody. That's why I said I would love to be a team sport, because you need everybody facing the same direction for you to succeed. So that's really it in a nutshell.
But what's critical is investment. So how can we drive investment into the Nigerian sports industry?
The easiest way is to have a policy that actually shows a national direction, a statement of intent by the government that here is where we want to go with this. We think the potentials can add 2 to 3% to our GDP. We think that this sector can actually create about 3 to 5 million jobs. We think that this sector can actually engage our youth. It can increase our real estate stock by X%. It can keep our manufacturers busy producing X value of goods, of sports kits, sport equipment, and it can contribute to other sectors like tourism, entertainment, and what have you. And it is a very heartwarming thing that last July, the federal government recategorized sports as a business officially. Right. So with that development, it was a major milestone that slipped under the radar, which was why we decided to have that pre-summit event to bring it above the radar. That people don't even understand how big this thing is. That recategorizing you means that you enjoy what you call, I think, is special status, which means you can go and ask for special incentives from NIPC, a basket of incentives that will encourage more money to come in. And with that money, you can build all these facilities. You can certainly make sports common in your community. Because at the heart of it being an economic driver is simply community. At the base, how do we get 190 million people, let's take 50% of them, about 90 million people spending 100 naira a day? That's the bottom line. So that recategorization opened up the space, and now we can sit down with National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS, and design a system of measuring the contribution of sports to the economy. A proper system of saying this activity in sports, this activity contributed X to the economy. We can sit down with the Nigerian Bar Association and say lawyers are needed to do some of the work, the legal work that would carry us to a particular point. So how can we work with the NBA and have a curriculum change, introduce sports law at maybe university level or as part of continuing education? Why sports law? When you commercialize a sector, there will be disputes. There will be arguments. People will enter agreement and fight. So how do we settle this kind of fights and disagreements and disputes without going through a regular court system that can take centuries? I've been in court for 13 years over a matter and it's still ongoing. Whereas if there had been a special court, like a court of arbitration for sports, because it was a sports-related matter, I would have gone there, and within 6 months, 1 year, I would have gotten settlement. So one of the things we're asking for, so that investors will be confident that if we bring our money and quarrel erupts, it's not 13 years we will use to settle the matter, and we will not be having foreign investors insisting that we'll go and settle dispute in a country other than Nigeria. So we're asking that a special court be established, a Nigerian Court of Arbitration for Sport. It is embedded inside this new policy. If you set up a Nigerian Court of Arbitration for Sports, we will not need to go to Switzerland to be settling our matter, the Court of Arbitration for Sports in Switzerland. Samson Sesia's matter has been going up and down there. And it's about $200,000. It will not be so expensive if we had our own here. Egypt has their own, South Africa has their own, Kenya has their own. Why would Nigeria not have its own? That's one. So investors will say, okay, so there's a court of arbitration. So if anything happens, I can go there. That's one. Secondly, the basket of incentives. So NIPC will put us inside their regular incentives portfolio and everything. So we can tell people, okay, if you bring your money, this will happen. And you can take it out like this. You will get tax holiday. You will do this. You will get the special status. You do. So we will work out something that actually suits sports, because we know the gestation period of an investment in sport. Okay, how are you going to guarantee? So investors will look at it and say, okay, all right, they've taken care of that. Then how are we guaranteeing a market? We sit with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, appointed it out. And I said, make this, either you make it an executive order or you make it a law or you make it a policy, but compel people, encourage mass participation in sport. So there's a target market of 70 out of our 90 million. We're getting somewhere. So those ones say, okay, there are 70 million people. Okay, all right, I can bring money. Then we move from there. So we've given target market. Okay, what about want to set up a manufacturing plant? We sit with state governments. Please, land is a problem. You are the ones in charge of land. Can you designate an area, an industrial zone, or a sports hub or a sports city? We work out that some more. Okay, so we've taken care of some issues. So we take care of everything that is needed through a systematic, well-drafted, well-written policy that recognizes that the private sector is at the heart of sports as an industry, with the government providing the enabling environment through this policy, the laws, the incentives. And that's why when we partnered with the Ministry of Sports, the concept of this repositioning of sports was the 3 I's and 1 P. The 3 I's is actually infrastructure, a massive infrastructure drive. So infrastructure driven by incentives-backed investment, and all backed by a policy. The 3 I's and 1 P. Over the next 10 years, the 3 I's and 1 P is expected to drive this level of development in the sports industry. It is our hope that by March we can kick off with the policy. And I guess by that time, a lot of people are getting ready. A lot of people actually want to see this policy. There are people with money, investment, who've seen the draft policy and are saying, so when's the final thing? People are getting ready. So I believe that once the policy is passed, we're going to begin to see a lot of action. Even the central bank, we can now look at it and say, okay, let's also create some kind of funding platform that is similar to what was done for the creative industries to actually help them kickstart an investment drive. The African Development Bank right now has a sports and creative industry fund. So we could go there, we could tap into it. So many people have those funds, but we cannot tap in if we do not know at the primary onset the government's statement of intent. How do you want to do it? It looks okay. The recategorization is okay. It has actually shown the direction that the government wants to do. But we now need that official policy, and also looking at the 2021 to 2025 medium-term National Development Plan. Sport is really there. I was very fortunate to have served and still serving as the deputy coordinator of that technical working group. And we have actually front-loaded a lot of private sector back initiatives saying, here is what the government needs to do. So that's what we need to do. For us to get more investment, we need to show the investor that your investment is going to be protected through appropriate laws and appropriate executive orders. I think we're on the right path. As I said, the minister is really gung-ho about this, and let's see how far we can go.
Thank you for joining us today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
You can learn more about the sports industry thematic group of the NESG by visiting our website www.nesgroup.org/PC. You can also listen to other interesting conversations by visiting our website also at nesgroup.org/podcast. Thanks once again, and see you next week. Thank you for listening to our content today. Remember to subscribe to the NESG Radio. Follow us across all social media channels and visit our website www.nesgroup.org/NESG Radio. NESG, in the national interest.